And I can remember waking up one night and seeing all these emails and all these donations into our PayPal account. It was like, what happened last night? I think that money is an important constraint, but there's lots of ways to be able to attract it.
Raise capital, just not investments that you can return. So it's more of a philanthropy play.
Using that farm analogy, one of the things I'm really interested in is the strength of a soil network, acknowledging that when you're looking at something that's really tough, that's sometimes the most important thing to do.
Everything you've done in the past does set you up for what's next. Like if you've done like a failed podcast, then a real podcasting opportunity comes along. Like you have skills. We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast, where we answer real questions and sometimes insane questions from Reddit about growing your startup. And today we're joined by Nic Marchesi. Nic Marchesi, the Young Australian of the Year, the Order of Australia Medal recipient, and a co-founder of Oranke Sky Laundry. When Nic was 20, he built a mobile laundry van to help the unhoused and people facing hardship. 10 years later, Oranke Sky has grown into one of the biggest non-for-profits in Australia. They've washed over 1 million kilos of laundry, provided over 12,000 showers, and fostered over 200,000 hours of genuine conversations, which is an insanely inspiring feat. One thing about Nic that I was super excited to have on is that very, very early in my journey of Vigo, Nic came and spoke at UQ at the accelerator that I was a part of. And he did like one of the most wild presentations I've ever seen. Like he didn't have a slide deck, but they kind of had slides, but they were almost like printed on t-shirts and stuff like that. And he and his co-founder just did this. It was so crazy inspiring. And at that moment, I was like, I want to present as well as Nic. And so like in my head, Nic's always been this like benchmark for me of, you know, if I work hard, I can get up to that level of, you know, presentation and orating and inspiring. So Nic's the goal, and I was super excited to have him on the show today. So let's jump into it. Welcome, mate. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, friend. Appreciate those kind words.
Well, Nic, before we jump into the Reddit questions, you've had, you know, as mentioned, a lot of hours of conversations with the unhoused and the people in hardship. What has been the most humbling moment in all of that conversation for you?
Yeah, I think like the one moment is always hard to fathom when now, you know, each and every week around Australia, thousands of hours of conversations take place. And I think, you know, there's no one arc or one story of what we experience at Oranke Sky, but I think the common thing is that we realize more and time again that we're all just made of the same stuff, and we have these moments where we are physically connected and we have an opportunity to chat, that we realize that we have more in common than we thought. So, you know, the other week we opened a new office for Oranke Sky, and you know, we've got this fancy new facility, which is amazing for our team to be able to help our teams deliver impact. And one of the rooms is named after the very first friend that I ever met out on a school food van, and it's called Harry's Room. And we had all these volunteers here to open the office, and then out of the corner of my eye, there was Harry. And you know, for me, my mind almost, you know, started racing and then erased because you know, Oranke Sky now has this massive tree with incredible assets and vans all across the country, and amazing staff and incredible volunteers and wonderful supporters. But what it actually comes back to is those really simple moments where, you know, Harry's not going to be around forever. Harry's probably in his 80s, but he caught 2 buses, found his way to our office and wanted to be here for the opening. And you know, he believes that, or he wants to be a part of Oranke Sky, and you know, absolutely, he is a massive part of Oranke Sky. So you know, I think it's those little moments that are so special and so big.
Man, that must have been a spin out. I don't know if I could get through that moment without crying. I don't think.
I had a good tear.
Yeah. Nice, man. And I was also really interested, right, as I was prepping for this, is that Oranke Sky did start out as, you know, 2 20-year-old guys wanting to help people, and it has grown into like an enterprise. And was there a moment where you had to change the way you thought about it? Like, was there a switch where it was you guys just had this van, and you know, you're doing your part, and it switched to being like, we're running an enterprise, and to have we can make impact on scale, but I feel like they're two different things, right? Like, was there a moment that triggered that for you?
Yeah, I think almost every day we need to remind ourselves that our organization's changing. And, when we started, it was, Nick and Lucas with this dodgy van, and our parents were on the board, and, we had friends and family helping out. And it was something that we just ran on a weekend. And then, the weekends got so busy that it was like, fuck, people want to wash their clothes during the week, and we need to be able to provide that service. And then, we were funding the whole project ourselves, and we were out on shift one day, and Lucas had remembered that this lady by the name of Carol had said, "Hey, when you become a registered charity, let me know. I'll come and check out what you do." So, Lucas flicked her a message, and she came down, and we are hanging out on shift for maybe about an hour, and Carol said, "What's next?" And we're like, "Yeah, we want to build another van." And she was like, "How much does a van cost?" And we had no idea. Like, we'd clapped this thing together. We just had no idea. And being 19 at the time, I said 100 grand, and because I was like, "Fuck, you can do anything with 100 grand." And so Carol wrote a check for 100 grand and said, "Go and build the van." And yeah, I think like now that those moments still give us goosebumps, because now that happens on an even bigger scale. But then one van grew to now 54 assets around Australia. 100 grand now has grown to over $10 million in donations each year. One volunteer is now grown to 4,000, and I think it's a reminder that behind Orange Sky is a collective of everyday people that are coming together and contributing, and that's what makes the organization and the mission so special.
Man, I love it. Well, let's pin that, because I want to keep learning about your moments there. But let's start giving some advice out to the audience on Reddit. So one thing that I have no idea about, I have no idea how to answer this, and I figured you'd be pretty well positioned for it, especially based on what you're just saying. So this question is called, can a nonprofit startup attract investment? Me and my friends are working on a small social impact oriented IT project, and we're trying to attract investors. It's hard to grow without money, so we're spending our savings on the project. The social impact nature of the project directs us towards registering a nonprofit, but we're all new and we just don't know where to begin. And we're really unsure if investments for nonprofits is even a thing. It's understandable why investors might invest in a business. They invest money to get money back with a huge return. But does that even work for nonprofits? Can you raise money at all? And this question is from Submerged Mole.
I love Reddit names.
Same, man.
Nice to meet you, Submerged Mole. So, like, definitely full disclosure, and don't want to sound like one of those automated phone things, but I'm not an accountant or a lawyer, and I failed. I did double accounting and I failed it. And the great thing about having a co-founder is that you can have different skills, and mine's definitely, I'm shit house at numbers, but really keen to answer this question. But if Lucas was here, you'd probably get a very specific answer rather. But probably the biggest thing to think about in a not-for-profit is the ownership structure. So in Australia, the ACNC, which is a regulator of the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission, essentially stipulates that if you are running a charitable entity, you still have an ABN, and it's set up similarly to a company limited by guarantee, or an entity, is that no one owns that entity. So you can't have shareholders, and the nature of the name is that the not-for-profit means that any profits that are made aren't distributed to directors. So absolutely, not-for-profits can make a profit, and that's been a really important part of Orange Sky's existence, is that we've actually, for the majority of Orange Sky's existence, made a profit. But then it's actually up to our constitution and our board and our directors and our broader community to decide how we reinvest those profits. So then around to attracting capital, one of the ways that, the majority of the way that Orange Sky attracts capital is through donations. So, donations for Orange Sky come from corporates who want to believe in it. Trusts and foundations who, in Australia, a lot of private ancillary funds have to, give money to charities as a part of their arrangement. But then also just everyday people. And, we've got, school kids, and we've got teams, and we've got parents that, contribute a significant amount of Orange Sky's capital into running. And so the main difference, I think, probably just calling out is from a very much a business perspective. Like, you can raise money in a not-for-profit, which, one sort of buzzword is this idea of untied funds or tied funds, where, a donor like Carol, she wrote a check and said, go and build another van. So we essentially just raised, that cash. It went into our bank account. But we didn't really know how much, a van cost, or, a generator would cost, or washing machines would cost. And, for some regions, we'd have to go out and get multiple donations. So from an investment perspective, the main difference would be is that a traditional investor would be looking for a return, and in a not-for-profit, the only return they can get is knowing that their contribution is helping the world. So, Orange Sky, we measure metrics like how many loads of washing we've done, or how many showers. But that's the only return, is that they know that, they trust us and know that we're going out and having an impact. We can't return a financial benefit to them, or by their investment, they don't own a portion of the entity. But in saying that, there is a really interesting and amazing movement around the world called social enterprises, which there is some confusion around the difference. But the main difference is that a social enterprise isn't a not-for-profit, so they can't issue tax-deductible receipts. However, most of the time they have a impact for people, planet, or some other P's that I can't recall at the moment. And then those entities can attract capital through ownership structures. And there's some blended models which get even more confusing, where essentially a social enterprise may have a partner organisation, which is a not-for-profit, and then they can achieve both. But in the startup phase, I think sometimes this shit can be really scary. And to bring it back to Orange Sky, when we started, we weren't a charity. It was just two mates that were like, we want to go out and help people. Lucas and I funded it ourselves. And then we registered a website, and we weren't a registered charity. And so the way that we attracted capital is we said, it costs us $24 to wash someone's clothes. You can buy a load of washing on behalf of someone else. And we saw thousands of donations from countries all around the world. We actually trended on Reddit, and I can remember waking up one night and seeing, all these emails and all these donations into our PayPal account. And it was like, what happened last night? And, one of our friends put Orange Sky on Reddit, and it went viral. And, we attracted lots of capital that night. And, at that point in time, we weren't a charity. So, I think that obviously money is an important constraint, but there's lots of ways to be able to attract it.
Man, that's interesting. So I guess there's not too much I can add here, right? I've never run a not-for-profit, so I'm just going to try and summarize my understanding of this, see if I've missed anything here. So if we look at the word specifically investment, it feels like not-for-profits can't actually take investment, because investment, like this person, Submerged Mole, was saying, an investment means someone's putting money in to take more money out. So if they're looking at this as a financial instrument, you can't invest in a not-for-profit. But you can donate to not-for-profits, absolutely. So if you're looking at this, I guess the decision has to be more made on what is your business, like a charity or a not-for-profit, or are you looking to give people returns, including yourself as founders? And if it purely is, for social impact and for good, it sounds like maybe it is a not-for-profit you go down, and you can definitely raise capital, just not investments that you can return. So it's more of a philanthropy play. So you can take on, millions and tens of millions of dollars, but there has to be in return for goodwill, or in return for impact. And if you want to do a model where you want to raise money and give money back and take money out as a founder, then you can't do that in a not-for-profit. Does that sound? Have I covered that, Nick?
Nailed it.
All right. Well, Submerged Mole, you've been advised just by Nick. You've had one person's advice here. Awesome, man. Well, let's move on to the next question here. So this next question is called, how do you just not give up? And I want to ask this one because you've been going for a long time, and you've obviously had a lot of success, but everyone, I feel like, gets to hits walls in their journey, and I'm sure there's been hard moments. So the question is, embarrassingly, I've probably started and stopped almost 20 ideas in the last 6 years. Initially, I'm super pumped, but when I encounter difficulty or a better opportunity, I lose motivation and I jump to the next idea. Entrepreneurs with staying power. How do you find the resilience to power through when the going gets tough? This is from On Gem.
Cool. Thank you, Anjem. Like, I think there's a couple ways to answer this. One is like acknowledging that this shit is tough. And like, our board chair said very eloquently one day, like, if we didn't want to be in an organization that had risk, we wouldn't be here. And so I think that that's a really important piece of advice that, one of our early mentors gave us, was that we have to just actually acknowledge and grapple what we're doing is tough or filled with challenge. And if we actually create space for that and name it, then I think there's opportunities to show up and respond to it. So, one is, I think, acknowledging the ecosystem, and also actively making a choice where we choose where we want to lean in and lean out, and acknowledging that we are working with people in potentially the toughest times of their life, and being grounded that we have agency, and a lot of the people that we help are in a really difficult spot where choice or independence has been taken away from them. So, we feel a tremendous privilege in being able to work in this space, but also acknowledging that, if we wanted to not have risk or not work on tough things, that potentially we wouldn't be working in the space that we are. The second is like the F word we're obsessed with at Oranke Sky, which is friend. And so I've been very fortunate that throughout the whole journey of Oranke Sky, I've done this with my best friend. And, I feel incredibly lucky to be able to experience the last decade with Lucas. And, we've, had moments where it's been the best times of our life. We've had moments where it's been the toughest times of our life. And we've actually shared that majority of those experiences together, and been able to journey on that. And I think that, there are solo founders out there that don't have that opportunity to have co-founders, but I think having, friends along the journey who you can share those wins or losses or, what the fuck moments with, I think is really important. But then I also think there's a moment, third thing I just think about is, I'm pretty obsessed with learning from nature, and that's a new thing to me. And I'm obsessed with tractors as well. So this sort of analogy sort of is grounded around nature and the farm. And I've got a breadth of domains that I'm interested in, and I've got a breadth of things I like playing with. And sometimes they're really obvious how they're connected, and sometimes it's very easy to silo them and disconnect them. But using that farm analogy, one of the things I'm really interested in is the strength of a soil network, and this idea of ideas or projects being seeds that we grow. And so if I treated my life as a farm right now, a big part of the field and the nutrients and the produce is this amazing opportunity to be a part of Oranke Sky. And there's some fields of other things that, I'm tending to and watering and trying to grow. And there's paddocks of dead shit and paddocks of weeds and, paddocks of chaos. But then also there's this nutrients of soil, of ideas or projects that I've done in the past that have been like decomposed and composted. And in its simplest form, that's probably those things that I've given up on. And I think the strength is that, they haven't there are things in my life that I've given up on that have become out of control weeds, and are overwhelming. But there's also things that I've given up on and really composted that and brought that into that soil network. And I think that, that's something that I think about, and what nature's taught me a lot is that these cycles are really important. And I think looking at that macro and micro lens is really important. But also coming back to the first point, acknowledging that when you're looking at something that's really tough, that's sometimes the most important thing to do.
Man, your immediate reading that's such a kind answer. Mine feels so much less kind than the way I thought about it. But like, no, I definitely agree with everything you're saying. Right. I sometimes like I like look at my day and I'm like, this is so fucked, and 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 then I remember like, oh, I'm choosing to be here. Like there are easier jobs out there than what I'm doing, right? Like I don't have to fucking do this. So I totally agree with that. And then also, being surrounded by people that makes a huge difference, right? Like I'm the same as you. I co-founded with good friends, and we're still friends after all these years. And the days I wanted to give up, they were there to pick me up and to drag me through, and vice versa. Um, and I to a large extent I agree with your soil analogy. Like I've done heaps of stuff that worked and heaps of stuff that didn't work, and all of that kind of like creates this ground for me to stand on now. And these next opportunities that I get, like that's there because of what I've achieved and failed in the past. So everything you've done in the past does set you up for what's next. Like, it's if you've done like a failed podcast, then a real podcasting opportunity comes along. Like you have skills, so like you've done the work there. But I guess like maybe where I differ from you, or at least maybe you didn't cover this ground, is I guess first thing is like there's heaps of ways to kind of hold yourself more accountable. Surround yourself with friends, say shit publicly. Like there's a lot of that stuff. But I also think just that like one of the main differences between people who have success in what they're trying and people who don't is that they just fucking do it. Like, yeah, sometimes it's hard, but just fucking stick with it. Spend an hour a week or 5 hours a week or however much you care about this and actually do it for like a full year. Like it's nothing that you do is going to be a huge success straight away. Like it takes way longer, it's way harder, and you're just probably giving up way too early. Now that being said, I know there are worlds, right? I know there are ideas that suck and you should give up on them. But if this person said that, they've started 20 ideas in the last 6 years or whatever, like just fucking pick one and go for it. Like the tough love in me just says like just stop fucking giving up. Like if you actually care, do it, or just give up completely. Like give yourself a real hard go, because I do think even myself, right, I sometimes I'm like this is a good idea and then I give up on it. But then the ideas that I actually have staying power with, and I just fucking go for it and I hold myself accountable. It's not the fact that I told a friend about it or I posted about it. It's like, no, I decided I'm gonna fucking do this. I don't know, that's for me. I don't know how you feel about that, Nick.
I couldn't agree anymore, in a sense that, I have a bias towards action, and really agree that, life is a balance between wisdom and action. And we might know that it's a good idea to focus on our well-being, but then if we don't actually do anything about it, then we're going to trend in the wrong direction. So, absolutely, there's we have a deficit of action, and acting is doing shit is tough. But I actually think that, through doing that we become stronger, and whether that be from a physical sense, for caring for our body, taking those steps and actioning to get stronger, or whether it be from a business sense, building those muscles of, one of the things I'm actively working at the moment is giving and receiving feedback. And the season that I'm in at Oranke Sky at the moment is, for the majority of the last 10 years, I've led teams and had teams of people. But for the last couple of years, I haven't had a team. And so that muscle of like being able to give quick, direct feedback to colleagues in in a respectful and engaging way, that muscle's a bit weak, and it's something that I'm trying to strengthen.
Man, getting into feedback for the first time is so brutal. We went through that learning journey for sure. Book recommendation, if you haven't read it already, is Radical Candor. Man, that book is insane. That's one of the values of Vigo, is that we go hard on that. We make everyone read it when they start with the company, because we're just like, here's how we do feedback, and it's a lot and it's super uncomfortable. But All right, well, let me try and wrap this one up. So, how do you just not give up? There's a few different pillars here, which I think we've covered, but to summarize them, how do you not give up? One, do something for the right reason. So like Nic is like helping people change their lives, and he sees that, so he remains that closer. When it's easy to do it when you see that impact. Next thing is like do it with people around you that hold you accountable, whether that's friends or a board or like have that kind of external accountability. Um, the third thing I'd say is like face the fact that this is hard. That doing a business or doing a big project that can be super fucking hard, and it's gonna be way worse than you imagine. Your idea is not going to work nearly as well, and you need to stick at it. But those failures that you've had in the past give you opportunity for everything you do forward. So if you fail at once and you try again in a new way, like you're so much more likely to succeed. And the last thing, and more so from my side, is like just fucking don't give up. Like if you keep giving up, you will keep giving up. So just hold yourself accountable, because someone else isn't going to do that for you. It's going to have to come from you. And I think when you look around the people who are successful, like they have, like Nic said, a bias towards action, like he does. And I think just do the work and just pick that one idea and just go at it, man. Just fucking run at it. That's it. It's anything you want to add there before we move on from this one, Nic?
Maybe have fun.
That's a good one.
Yeah, like this shit. Yeah, like I stole Lucas's value, but yeah, I think we can be working in incredibly serious industries, but just making it enjoyable. Like I love learning, I love making stuff, and I love helping people. So it's a pretty home ground to when the going gets tough. It might be tough, but you're having a fucking blast, through that journey. So yeah, maybe have a bit of fun.
I love it, man. Definitely skipped over that one. Well, I think that's probably all we have time for. So let's go to the last section of the show, which is called plugs. So tell me, mate, what do you want to plug at the moment? Any books you've been reading? Shout out Oranke Sky, shout out Curious Tractor. What are the things you want to shout out to the world?
That's a great question. Thank you. I'd definitely love to plug the F word, which is our attempt at being like you, Joel. We had this idea of using audio to break down stereotypes and stigmas of homelessness. So created a little 6-part series about homelessness and hardship. And we were lucky enough to track down Oranke Sky's first ever friend and speak to him, a guy by the name of Jordan, which was super special to Oranke Sky's existence. Definitely plug at a time, I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but towards the end of the year, people are tired and longing for connection, and I always think about through some amazing feedback from my parents, thinking about the first of anything is usually the toughest, and I always think about in seasons like Christmas and New Year, those loved ones in our community that might be their first time without their loved one, and so just checking in on those people around us, and not overcomplicating it, but just saying, hey, how you doing? I know this is the first Christmas without your dad, and I know that it was a really important time for you, and I think also the opportunity just to get curious. So definitely plugging curiosity. That I think there's never been a more easy time in existence to learn, and fill that wisdom bucket. But I actually think complementing that with a bit of action, and I think this time of the year is always a time where we make outrageous commitments to ourselves that only in a few weeks we would have put it on the backlog. But I think this idea around if you do have some time off towards the end of the year, maybe challenging yourself to lean into some wisdom, but also complement that with some action around how are you going to actually enable the success of that knowledge or that idea in the next seasons.
Man, what beautiful plugs. And I'm not going to do any for the first episode ever. No plugs on my side, because this is like the third strike in this podcast where it's pretty clear that like Nic's a beautiful person and I'm just a capitalistic dickhead. So Nic, that was beautiful, man. Thank you so much for doing good in the world and inspiring people to take action and to create the future that they want to be a part of. So, man, I think you're doing awesome shit with Orange Sky. I think your long list of awards that you've won just show that what you're doing creates real impact in the world. So, thank you, man. I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today and sharing that with the audience.
And thank you for being you, Joel.
Awesome. Well, to everyone else, this has been another episode of the Do As I Say podcast. We'll see you all next week.